Secretary Hegseth, if you listened to my comments, you would have heard me say how amazing our warfighters are.
I heard failure. And the word heard, I heard exactly what you said.
I will tell you how I use the word failure, because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure, not the men and women who are on that front line.
The hearing exploded when Senator Gary Peters accused Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth of failing America's troops, and Hegseth fired back with a blistering defense. But Peters wasn't backing down. His response stunned the room. You, sir, are the failure, not our warfighters. It became one of the most intense clashes over the Iran war yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses here today. I want to begin by first echoing my colleagues' comments that we've heard throughout the hearing here, and join them in mourning the loss of American service members who were killed in action these last few days. My thoughts are with their families, with a service member who remains missing, and with all those injured during the strikes. And I will continue to pray for their families. Secretary Hegseth, over the course of the war with Iran, I have repeatedly expressed concerns regarding the administration's lack of a winning strategy and repeated contradictions about the state of the war. Frankly, it doesn't help that you and your president continues to mislead the American people. You and the president have repeatedly said that the war, as we've heard over and over again, is almost over or already won. In fact, the president alone has said the war is almost over more than 30 times. On March 1st, the president said, we'll be done in 4 or 5 weeks. On March 9th, he said the war was very complete. On April 8th, he declared total and complete victory, 100%, no question about it. On the same day, you declared Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield, a capital V military victory by any measure. And yet today, July 21st, we have soldiers whose remains are sadly going to be returned to their deeply grieving families tomorrow. Clearly, the war is not over yet. After months of conflict, our strategy to win remains unclear. I have long said the United States has the strongest military in history in the world, and I have no doubt that our brave service members can execute any mission and prevail in any battle. But without a clear winning strategy, we're at risk of being in another forever war that'll put our service members in continued harm's way and continue to cost taxpayers billions of dollars. Secretary Hegseth, despite your failure to win this war, you are back now before Congress asking for almost $70 billion in additional funding. You're asking the American people for a blank check because, once again, the Trump administration's efforts have been an utter and complete failure to win this war to this point. So my question for you, sir, is how is your strategy different than what we've seen in the past? So far, we have not seen a strategy that's been successful. You mentioned nuclear material as the primary goal of the war. It still exists. We haven't dealt with that issue yet. You talk about the destruction of missiles, and yet the missiles that we saw hit recent targets are actually somehow more lethal, more deadly, more maneuverable than what we have seen in the past. So they're obviously improving their munitions. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, reminding everybody it was open before the war. Prices were lower for everybody until the war, and it still remains closed. And of course, tragically, people, service members, our warfighters, who we care deeply about, are still dying. So what's different? Mr. Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth.
I think your characterization of this incredible effort as a failure is reckless. And I think it's irresponsible. And I think it smears the sacrifice of the troops that are out there making on behalf of the American people to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. Shame on you and others who call this a quagmire and a failure, and then you want to turn around and say you support the warfighter. Either you do or you don't.
Is the nuclear material still there,
I can get you a ticket out to CENTCOM and talk to what those Americans are doing, and how committed they are to this effort, and how they want to ensure that Iran never threatens their families. with a nuclear weapon. That's the kind of intensity that our warfighters have about making sure that Iran isn't capable of doing that.
Secretary Hegseth, if you listen to my comments, you would have heard me say how amazing our warfighters are.
I heard failure. And the word I heard exactly what you said.
I will tell you how I use the word failure, because I use the word failure to their leaders. You, sir, are the failure, not the men and women who are on that front line, not the men and women who hold up their honor with distinction. But if there's a lack of a winning strategy, they're in harm's way. Their leaders have failed them. And that's what's happening. We have political leadership. You don't have a strategy. You don't have a long-term plan to actually win this war. Win the war. The men and women are going to be able to do it, but they need to have leadership. When will you show leadership?
We have leadership.
When will you show leadership?
Why don't you show some leadership and stand up to your fellow Democrats who won't fund the troops, who stand and play partisan politics while you don't give us the money? You want to stand up here and talk about the troops? You won't show any political courage to actually fund our department because you have Trump derangement syndrome and can't actually commit to anything meaningful. So I put this on you, Senator.
Secretary Hegseth, you have trillions, you have over $1 trillion, you're asking for $1.5 trillion. It's not a question of money, it's a question of leadership and understanding what it takes to actually win.
Political cowardice of Democrats who won't fund the troops.
Senator's time has expired.
One of the most dramatic moments of the hearing unfolded when Senator Gary Peters directly challenged Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over the Trump administration's handling of the war with Iran. What began as a policy disagreement quickly escalated into a deeply personal confrontation about leadership, military strategy, and accountability. Peters opened his remarks by honoring the American service members who had recently been killed in action. He expressed sympathy for their families, recognized those who had been injured, and acknowledged the sacrifice being made by troops serving overseas. By beginning on that note, Peters made it clear that his criticism was not directed at the military itself but at the civilian leadership responsible for directing the conflict. From there, he laid out what he viewed as a troubling pattern. Peters argued that throughout the war, President Trump and Secretary Hegseth repeatedly assured Americans that victory was close at hand. According to Peters, the administration had declared success over and over again while the fighting continued, casualties mounted, and key objectives remained unresolved. He pointed to multiple public statements in which President Trump declared the war nearly finished or completely won. Peters contrasted those optimistic declarations with the reality that American service members were still dying months later. For him, that contradiction raised a larger question: if the war had supposedly already been won, why were troops still being deployed into dangerous combat operations? Peters stressed that he has complete confidence in America's armed forces. He praised their professionalism, courage, and ability to accomplish any mission assigned to them. His concern, he said, was not about the capabilities of the troops but about whether those troops had been given a coherent strategy capable of delivering a lasting victory. He then listed several objectives that, in his view, remained unfulfilled. Peters argued that Iran's nuclear program had not been fully eliminated despite repeated claims of success. He also claimed that Iranian missile capabilities continued to evolve, pointing to recent attacks that appeared more advanced than earlier strikes. He noted that the Strait of Hormuz remained closed despite administration promises, continuing to disrupt global energy markets and keep fuel prices elevated. For Peters, those facts suggested that the administration had achieved tactical military victories without securing the broader strategic goals it had promised the American people. The senator then turned to the administration's budget request, questioning why Congress should approve tens of billions of dollars in additional defense spending when, in his view, the current strategy had yet to produce the results officials promised. That criticism triggered the hearing's most explosive exchange. Secretary Hegseth immediately rejected Peters' characterization of the war as a failure. He called the accusation reckless and irresponsible, arguing that describing the mission that way unfairly diminished the sacrifices made by American troops serving in the region. Hegseth insisted the mission remained focused on preventing Iran from ever obtaining a nuclear weapon and defended the commitment of the men and women carrying out that objective. He argued that the troops understood the importance of the mission and were determined to complete it. But Peters interrupted to make what became the defining moment of the hearing. he clarified that he had never criticized the troops themselves. Instead, he praised them once again before delivering a direct rebuke to the secretary. "You, sir, are the failure." Peters argued that when military personnel are sent into dangerous situations without what he considers a clear path to victory, responsibility belongs with the political leadership, not with the soldiers risking their lives. He accused Hegseth of failing to provide the long-term strategy necessary to achieve lasting success and questioned when the Defense Secretary would demonstrate the leadership needed to bring the conflict to a conclusion. Hegseth fired back just as forcefully. Rather than addressing Peters' strategic concerns directly, he accused Democrats of refusing to fully fund the military while simultaneously criticizing military operations. He argued that partisan politics, not Pentagon leadership, was undermining the nation's ability to support troops in the field. The exchange quickly shifted from a debate over military strategy into a broader political confrontation between the administration and congressional Democrats. At its core, however, the hearing reflected one of the biggest questions surrounding the Iran conflict. Supporters of the administration argue that military pressure has significantly weakened Iran's capabilities and reduced the threat posed by its nuclear ambitions. Critics counter that tactical successes do not automatically translate into strategic victory and warn that without a clearly defined endgame, the United States risks becoming trapped in another prolonged conflict. Gary Peters made it clear which side of that debate he stands on. His message was that America's service members deserve not only the world's strongest military equipment but also a clear, achievable strategy from the leaders sending them into battle. Whether viewers agree with Peters or Hegseth, one thing is certain: this hearing produced one of the sharpest and most emotionally charged confrontations yet over the direction of America's involvement in the Iran war.